All right, so we learned a little bit about particles and gravity and all this good stuff. What I'm going to do is just go ahead and move the cube here, delete these two keyframes. I unchecked auto key here, and then that way if I hit spacebar now, you could see they just fall. What I'd like to talk about in this lesson is really just about how do we get this so that the particles sort of bounce off of a surface, right? We're going to be using this a little bit when the pieces of our particles hit the floor. So I'm going to hit Shift A here. I'm going to do mesh and I'm going to create a plane. I'm going to hit S to scale this up. And let's go ahead and turn off as well the face orientation. So we're just kind of looking at our cube. And now when I hit spacebar, you can see that the particles fall through this plane. And that's not what we want. I'd like my particles to fall off the surface, sort of like rain or pieces of a building as they explode. So with our plane selected, you want to go to the physics property here, and you want to turn on collision. And now when I hit spacebar, you can see that these particles will bounce off the surface. And if I hit R here for rotate, and I'm going to say rotate it on the y-axis, and I do it this way, you can see now they bounce and they sort of bounce and they follow the surface there, right? So I'm going to go back to particles here. I'm going to select this guy up here, and I'm going to go to emission, and I'm going to make the end of this to be, the lifetime to be maybe 100, so that we can, kind of watch them sort of fall and roll off a little bit more. So you can see that, which is kind of cool. So this could be like water running down a gutter, something like that. And some other things you can do is if we look at our deflection section here, you can see it says size of deflector, die on hit. So for example, if I hit spacebar here, you can have it where certain surfaces, it just hits it and they die, things like that. All right, so below that, you can see there's a collection here. And what you can do is you can create a collection, and that's sort of like these, say we have a collection here, and the particles will only affect or deal with things within that collection. So let's say we make this mass 10, right? And I go back and I hit space. You can see here that they have a little bit more of a bounce. Let's see if we go take this drag and make this 0. Let's see what that does. You can see we get more of a bounce, right? So I'm going to take this, hit Shift D, move it over here, hit R and then Y, and rotate this. And I'm going to move this in place. And let's move it a little bit further back. So now if I hit spacebar, you can see they bounce there, then they bounce off this other surface, right? And then I'm going to hit Shift D one more time, and I'm just going to place this in the front here. Now these two, I'm going to select both of them. Let me go back, hit Shift M, and then I'm going to add them to a new collection called collision. Or I'll just see COL because I'm lazy. Notice that this plane is not inside of COL, right? Actually, I did not save that. So let's do Shift M. It's like both of these, Shift M, new collection, and COL. And then create. There we go. So now you can see these two planes are in here. And if I select this guy and I go to the collection that I want, which is COL, and I hit spacebar, you can see they're bouncing and they're ignoring this guy right here. See that? So let's go back here, and I'm going to actually delete that by hitting X. All right, so I'm going to delete this guy too, actually. Now, what I can do here is, let's close deflection. If you go to integration here, this is the timestamp. So this is actually the speed, right? So if I make the this maybe 1, and I hit spacebar, you can see they're flying. They're going nuts. But if I make this 0.1, you can see they are much slower. I can even take it down to 0.01. You can see that the actual, it's almost like this slow motion effect, right? But it still takes into account that they need to hit by 100. So I can do 0.1 here again, and you could see here that we have not even reached 100 and they're still going. So I think it was 0.05. I forget. I think I can actually just right click and reset this too. But let's see. I think that's fine. I mean, that's getting the message, the point across. Now, subframes here is you can add additional frames. So if I hit 5 here, what you'll notice is those particles will fall a lot smoother. So it provides a much more smoother event. All right, so now we get into renderer, right? And so this is where, for example, if I hit F12 now, you can see we get nothing, right? And it's actually rendering frame 41. You can see, or 56, and this is time frame 56, 41 seconds in. So let's say I'm going to hit Shift A here. I'm going to go to Mesh and I'm going to create a icosphere. And I'm just going to hit G. I'm going to hit S to scale this down. And I'm going to hit Shift A or Control A rather. And I'm just going to reset the transform so that this is the size 1. Now if I go inside of here and I change this from halo to object, I can actually go in now and it says instantiated object, and I can click on this and I can select my icosphere, or you can click in here and select one of the objects from the scene. And now when I go back and I hit spacebar, you can see that they fall. And if I hit F12 to render this, you can see that it's actually rendering little icospheres. Now, if you look in renderer scale, I can actually scale them up. And let's go back and I hit spacebar. Now you can see they're falling out of the surface of this object. Oh, actually they're coming out of, interesting that this is, let me hit Control A and then just reset the location there. And go back and hit spacebar. It looks like my pivot is, oh, because of my pivot. Let's go to object transform or set origin, geometry to origin, or origin to geometry. Let's see if that fixes the issue. I think my emission stuff is offset. Actually, I think that has to do, let me delete this ecosphere and hit space. Yeah, that actually has to do with my sphere. Let me actually make another icosphere, and this time I will not reset the transform or the position. And then this should work now where it doesn't mess up the, so object. Yeah, so now it's not messing it up. Do you see that? And then I can adjust the scale here. So if I make this 0.1 or something. And this is going to be useful later when we actually start having it have little pieces of our building kind of come off when it gets destroyed. All right, so let's say we have this sphere. I'm going to hit Shift A and I'm going to create a monkey head. And I'm going to hit G here. And this is also going to be useful when we go to essentially our building with these different pieces. So as it explodes, like different pieces can fall off as particles. So I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to hit Shift M and I'm going to create a new collection. And I'm going to call this building pieces, even though they are not building pieces, but it's just to kind of help illustrate the point. So I'm going to hit create there and you can see here's building pieces. And now when I go inside of here, instead of object, I can go to collection, and then it's asking me what collection, and I want to do building pieces. And now you can see after I hit spacebar, I have monkey heads and icospheres bouncing around from the surface of this object here. All right, so let's scroll down a little bit here. And if we want, you could see there's icospheres in Susan. We can hit use count. And for this, I can actually increase the count. And now most of them will be, do you see how in our scene, they go from 0 icospheres, they'll be mostly monkey heads. So say I want to add another, so I'm going to select building pieces here, Shift A, and I want to add a, I don't know, cone. And that's inside of here. And so now when I select this, in my collection, you can see I might have to reset the collection. So I'll go to collection here, building pieces, and I'll select building pieces again. You can see now it added cones. So this is kind of a nifty, way of saying, I want more cones than monkey pieces of whatever the building is that we're doing. All right, now notice when I do this, they're all sort of just falling straight down. What we can do is if we go down to rotation here, and I turn this on, you can see we can actually adjust based on normal or tangent how randomized we want that rotation to be. So now when I hit spacebar, you can see they're falling and they're rotating on their own at different ways. Now this is pretty nifty. There's dynamic here, and what that'll do is as they hit this plane here and bounce, they'll actually rotate again. So it adds a lot of realism to this. The reason why they have these as separate options is A, to give you more of an ability to do things, you know what I mean, like in your piece, but also it gets expensive when you start to play with a lot of these parameters. Expensive being adding render time. Now, notice also as they come down, they're not actually spinning, right? They're falling. They initially rotate, then they fall. If you want them to be rotating as they fall, you want to increase the velocity here. So now you can see that they're actually rotating as they fall and they bounce off. Let me actually, let's see, going to increase the dampen just a little bit so they don't bounce as much. Yeah, so we get to see a little bit more of that in action. Now, the last thing I want to show you in this video is if you have a computer that's not very powerful, maybe this should have been the first thing, is it says viewport display as rendered. This is how it would look in your scene. You could just do points, and then when you hit spacebar now, you can watch it. And then once you have all those other things set up, you can hit F12, and then you can just watch the render. I'm going to go ahead and just go into the camera for a second and just lock this so we can kind of see it a little bit. And then I'm going to unlock it. And then now when I hit F12, you can see a little bit better of a render. The light needs to change and rotate and all this stuff, but yeah, so this is, if you have a slower computer, you can make it points, circles, whatever you like. Circles might be less taxing. I'm not sure. That's it for this one. In the next lesson, we'll just continue on with working on particles.